State legislatures have introduced more than 300 pieces of legislation restricting abortion this year, more than any year in history, and that's according to a pro-abortion rights group. In the first 6 months of 2019, 6 states passed so-called heartbeat laws, which prohibit the procedure after a fetal heartbeat can be detected. Alabama went a step further, banning abortions in nearly all cases. Planned Parenthood has been on the front lines of the abortion rights debate, challenging many of those laws in court. But earlier this month, the organization's president and CEO, Dr. Leanna Wen, was abruptly ousted. Alexis McGill Johnson has taken over as interim in the position. CBS News reporter Kate Smith spoke with McGill Johnson in her first interview since stepping into the role. They discussed the future of Planned Parenthood and its place in politics.
One thing about Dr. Wen's departure from Planned Parenthood has gotten a lot of people wondering, what is Planned Parenthood? Where are they? Are they a political organization, or are they a network of healthcare? And what is your answer to that?
The truth is, it's a false choice. We are primarily a healthcare provider. We provide access to sexual and reproductive health, in some cases primary care. What I would suggest is that, we're not political by nature, but we've been politicized. And that fight has actually been our focus to ensure that our health centers stay open.
Is there a scenario where you would discontinue abortion services in order to make everything else that you do easier, better funded, and just easier for your patients?
Absolutely not. No, I was on the board when we voted to ensure that abortion was one of our core services that every center affiliated with Planned Parenthood would provide. We think it's a critical part of access to full reproductive and sexual health care. And so there's no scenario where we would actively decide on our own to not provide it. It is a medical procedure, it's a healthcare procedure, and we believe that it should be seen in that broad spectrum of healthcare.
Do you think tax dollars should pay for abortions? When we're talking about Title X, we're talking obviously about birth control. What about abortion? Should that be something that federal dollars go towards?
Well, currently federal dollars do not go to abortions because of the Hyde Amendment. I do think that when you look at the broad spectrum of healthcare and you locate abortion as one of the procedure that is, common among a third of women, then yes, I do think that tax dollars should support the broad range of healthcare. Absolutely.
There are people who believe abortion is morally wrong. It's about 28% of Americans have said that. What do you say to those people?
77% of Americans actually have strong support for Roe. And so when I understand the moral concerns that people may have with respect to abortion, I also believe that what that 77% number is telling me is that people want the woman to be able to make that decision in concert with her medical provider and her religious provider, as it were. And so I think the question is really about whether or not the government should be involved in these decisions, or if a woman has a right to make these decisions with her God and her doctor.
What is at stake here with women's reproductive health care decisions?
Look, I think that we are very concerned about Roe, obviously, right? I mean, we have a court that hangs in the balance. We have several cases that hang in the balance. So, what's at stake is our ability and our access to control our own lives through our reproductive choices.
Is it essential that women are able to have access to abortion in every state, even if it's not necessarily reflective of their constituents?
Yes. I mean, your health care shouldn't be determined by your zip code. So it is critically important for all women to have access to, or all people to have access to sexual and reproductive health care here in whatever state they choose. What we don't want to do is go back to times where people were making very awful choices, life-threatening choices to access abortion care or connecting to providers that aren't as trusted in their communities.
And CBS News reporter Kate Smith joins me now on set. Kate, walk us through a little bit here. What sort of environment is Johnson walking into right now in Planned Parenthood?
I think it's hard to overstate what a critical moment this is for abortion access in the United States. Like you mentioned earlier, we have seen an unprecedented number of anti-abortion access legislations passed and introduced, this session. And so that is what Johnson is walking into right now. She is walking into one of the most, hostile moments for abortion access. Mm-hmm. And then not only that, externally from Planned Parenthood, internally, there's a debate going on about whether whether or not Planned Parenthood is a provider or an advocate. So not only is there a lot going on outside the organization, within the organization as well.
Tell me a little bit more about Johnson's background. How did she get involved in Planned Parenthood?
So Johnson is a former member of the board of trustees at Planned Parenthood, and she was also the board chair from 2015 to 2017. So she's intimately aware of how this organization is run, what it works, and a critical piece of that when you're on the board, fundraising. So right now, Planned Parenthood is dealing with Title X problems. What that is, those are federal funds that go towards funding birth control for low-income women. Now, what the Trump administration has said right now is that if you refer patients to abortion, so if a patient comes in, says they're pregnant, you're not allowed to say, abortion's on the table. And so Planned Parenthood is saying, rather than accepting these millions of dollars that we rely on, we're going to leave that on the table because we don't want to compromise the health care that we give to our patients. And so Johnson being here right now is very important because she knows how to fundraise, she knows how that works, and so they're able to kind of put their own priorities ahead of the dollars that they rely on from the federal government.
Planned Parenthood is supposedly a health care provider, but it's hard to ignore the political tinge that's come with it. Johnson said in the interview with you that we're not political, we've been politicized. How are they handling that?
That's a great question. And the way Johnson explained it to me is this. Abortion is one of the services that they provide. State legislators are actively trying to stop them from providing that service. And so if they didn't have to worry about the ability to provide abortion, they of course wouldn't be in the courts challenging things. They would just be doing things as usual. But because state lawmakers have really zeroed in on this procedure and zeroed in on them as an organization, they have been forced into a position where they have to be in the courts, have to be political, and have to be engaging people in, Washington, D.C.
Speaking of in the courts, you have some news to break actually on set today. Tell us a little bit more about Missouri.
Yes, we do. So right now, Planned Parenthood and the ACLU has just filed a lawsuit against Missouri's omnibus anti-abortion package that they passed earlier this year. In that bill, they have a series of different things, but the most important is an 8-week ban on abortions. Now, state lawmakers say this is tied to fetal heartbeat activity when you can detect that in the womb. But however, there's a lot of other things that happen in this bill. So the way they worded it is that if the 8-week ban is found to be unconstitutional, there's a 14-week ban. If that's found unconstitutional, there's another one and another one. And so this lawsuit is actually a little unprecedented in the sense that it goes after every single one of those. So I was talking to a Planned Parenthood person on the litigation team, and they were telling me that they've never filed a lawsuit this wide in scope before. So
do they have confidence they'll be successful?
I think they do. So right now, Missouri is the last heartbeat bill that hasn't been challenged. So after this filing, every single heartbeat bill will be in the courts. Now that's really significant because that was a huge driver of news in the abortion access world earlier this year. So to know that every single one of them is now tied up in the courts, that's very significant. And that's what Johnson said as well. And every single one of those, except in the case of Georgia, a preliminary injunction has already been granted, meaning that courts believe that there's a substantial reason to believe that Planned Parenthood, ACLU, groups like that will ultimately prevail.
Kate, when you talk to Planned Parenthood officials privately, how concerned are they over Roe v. Wade being overturned?
That's a great question. They are concerned, because there is just this unrelenting attack on women's access to abortion care. And because of a new makeup that you see in the Supreme Court that could lean conservative, there's an opening. So if the Supreme Court wants to take another look at Roe v. Wade, which many legal scholars say is shaky, if they want to take another look at that, there's an opportunity to, and we have 13 cases right now going through the system that could potentially, unravel that. So this is something that they're thinking about all the time. It's important, and it really is critical to their mission of providing holistic health care, reproductive health care to women.
You were talking a little bit about funding earlier. Walk me through, there's some tax money that has been agreed on should not go to abortion. Walk me through that and what their thinking is on that.
Yes, so that is so important. In this interview that we just aired, Johnson said that she believes that tax dollars should actually pay for abortion. That is not what currently happens. Right now, because of the Hyde Amendment, no federal funding can go towards any abortion care in the entire country. Now, what she believes, and what every other Democratic candidate believes as well, I should mention, is that that amendment should be overruled. That means that federal dollars should be sent to abortion care in the United States. And so that is, that is a critical piece of information that we're hearing from Planned Parenthood, where they see funding should happen in the government.
What are you watching for next, Kate, in this whole fight with Planned Parenthood?
I mean, we're going to be looking at the heartbeat bills, right? What happens in court? Are they getting the preliminary injunctions? And then what happens after that? I think another thing that's so important, and Rena, you and I have spoken about this so many times, are trap laws. Those are the targeted regulation of abortion providers. And these are the ones that are effectively shutting down abortion clinics in the country, right? It's not these bans. So like we've been talking about in Missouri, that one last clinic that almost closed earlier this year, that had nothing to do with the ban on abortion. That had to do with these smaller regulations that so often go under the radar, and they close abortion clinics all the time. So that's what I'm going to be looking at, because that really speaks to what actually is access to abortion for women in this country right now.
And it's an issue that both left and the right feel very passionately about. So,
yes, they do.
Your reporting's been so great on this. Thank you so much for keeping us up to date. Kate Smith, great interview.